G'day guys, Sean here from Life and Tennis. In today's video, I'll be discussing Alex de Minaur's chances at this year's Roland Garros. As an Aussie, I believe this is his best chance, not only his best chance, but an Aussie's best chance at actually having a deep run and really challenging for the Roland Garros title. And that might be a bit of a stretch when you consider, Carlos Alcaraz is basically probably arguably the best player on clay at the moment, currently in the world. And obviously you never can at, Novak and a number of other players, even Tsitsipas, Musetti. There's a few players that tend to peak around their clay court swing. But de Minaur, I feel like he's been in career best form on clay in particular. He had a great run in Monte Carlo, and actually I feel I got very, very unlucky against Musetti in the semi-final where he was up a set and then the rain came and basically, really, really slowed down the play and let Musetti back into the match. And Musetti's the type of player that really loves a slow court. And I would say normally that would also suit de Minaur because he's, obviously one of the most consistent, most competitive, and obviously one of the fittest athletes on tour. But someone like Musetti, I feel like just plays better when he just has way more time on the ball and he can just unleash on his ground strokes, particularly that beautiful single-handed backhand that he's got. So de Minaur got a little bit unlucky not to get through to a final there. Again, I'm not sure that he would have been good enough to beat Alcaraz, but the thing is with Alcaraz, as opposed to Sinner, de Minaur's head-to-head, his results against Alcaraz aren't as one-sided as you might expect compared to Sinner, where, de Minaur has never really pushed Sinner in any of his matches. And, if this year's Oz Open was any indication, that matchup is so one-sided, and the amount of spin, the amount of RPMs that Sinner gets on his balls, on his shots, de Minaur just could not compete with that. And de Minaur, I think even after that match, it seems like he's actually worked on putting more, revolutions per minute into his shots, because definitely, so far this clay court season, he's probably been playing the best clay court tennis I've ever seen him play. He smashed Medvedev 2-2, and even though we all know that Medvedev doesn't love clay, he's obviously said that in the past, he's still a beast on all surfaces really, maybe with the exception of grass, but he's just a competitive beast. So to beat him this year, and then de Minaur also beat him last year at the French. He famously made the quarterfinals last year at the French Open, which was de Minaur's best result, and obviously last year was also de Minaur's best year in general on tour. So I definitely think he's got a big chance at going deep at Roland Garros this year. And to be honest, I think he's at a point where this is a good chance for the next 2 or 3 years. I think is as good a chance as any for him to really push higher into the top 5. And there's no reason why he can't compete for some of these Grand Slams. Obviously Sinner and Alcaraz still the two front runners at every slam. You have to say it's pretty hard to, when they're fully fit, to go past them. Zverev is obviously there, but he has that monkey on his back at the moment where he can make a couple of Grand Slam finals, but hasn't quite got over the line there. Actually 3 Grand Slam finals, should I say. So there's a bit of, that mental, that doubt that starts to creep in when he gets to the final stage of a tournament, particularly Grand Slam. And there's obviously a handful of other guys that, can compete for slams. But yes, de Minaur just seems like he's ready to go this year. So obviously we've got Madrid happening at the moment, and then Rome next. And I think maybe Hamburg is the very last clay court tournament before Roland Garros. And of course, at Rome at the next Masters 1000 after Madrid, Sinner is returning. So that'll be very, very interesting. And if any of you guys watched my last video, I did a little bit of analysis on, what to expect when Sinner makes his return back on tour. So very eagerly awaiting that one. But for now, de Minaur, and this is especially coming from as an Aussie, he's flying the flag for us Aussies at the moment as the most serious contender we've had at a slam since Ash Barty, obviously in the women's, but for in the men's, definitely since Leighton Hewitt. There's no one really that's come along since then that, you could really say, yeah, this guy's going to win a Grand Slam. The only reason why I'm not putting Nick Kyrgios in that boat is because from a pretty, early age, it was obvious that he didn't have the same kind of, he didn't work as hard as some of these other guys on tour. He had the talent. Talent was always there, but, that 2014 Wimbledon will always be, a very famous run where he beat Rafa the first time he ever played him, had a good run at Wimbledon, and we all thought this guy's going to be, the next Federer, Nadal, Novak, whatever. And yeah, he obviously has made a Grand Slam final since, losing to Novak in that 2021 Wimbledon final. You'd say arguably he had a relatively easy-ish run to the final. He didn't have to play Rafa in the semis. I still think he probably could have beaten Rafa then if Rafa was a little bit injured. But at the same time, he did have the benefit of a good run, and, he just ran into a white-hot Novak, in a Wimbledon final, who basically doesn't lose unless he's playing Alcaraz. So, if you put Nick Kyrgios to one side, I think de Minaur is definitely the guy that seems the most capable of winning a Grand Slam as an Aussie. So yeah, I'll also be really interested. I'm looking at for Alexei Popyrin as well, who had a great run the second half of last year and maybe hasn't had the best start this year. But yeah, introducing Wayne Ferreira into his coaching box seems to have, already paid dividends. He had a good run in Monte Carlo, I believe. He's changed. I think Wayne Ferreira changed his backhand technique. He actually spoke to the First Serve, who a website and a platform that I write for, run by the great Brett Phillips, who interviewed him about the partnership, Alexei's partnership with Wayne Ferreira and what he's bringing to the table. And that was one of the first things he said was he's changed the grip on his backhand, which might be an area of weakness of his. And yeah, Popyrin's a guy as well that I can see having deep runs at slams and at some of these Masters 1000 tournaments. Ironically, he's won a Masters 1000 and de Minaur hasn't, which is kind of funny in a way. It just shows how funny a sport tennis is, and sometimes you can just have these amazing runs and then that's it. You don't see much after that. Or you have a player that just has this freak run compared to another player who's just super, super consistent but just can't quite, get over the line or get to that final or get over the line once they make the final. So I'd definitely say that, de Minaur has had a much more consistent career than, he's probably a couple of years older, I think, than Alexei, but definitely had a more consistent career than Alexei. But Alexei probably has, more firepower, more weapons, let's say, but maybe not the consistency at this stage. But yeah, keen to see how Alexei's sort of rest of the year goes. If he can have a good couple of tournaments, at Madrid and, Rome and then into Roland Garros, hopefully he can build some momentum as well. So there's a couple of exciting Aussie tennis players that I think, could be, reaching their kind of their peak at the moment and potentially, like I said, competing for Grand Slams. In the women's, we've had, Maya Joint had a couple of great wins, a great first round win in Madrid. She's someone who, to look out for sure, American background, coming over to Australia. So yeah, she's one to look out for. And obviously we've had, Daria Kasatkina coming across to Australia, which, definitely helps in terms of like just Aussies in the top, 25, as someone to root for in some of these big tournaments. It almost feels like a bit of a cheat, to be honest, that she's now Australian. But, as an Australian, I'll still obviously, get behind her and hopefully she can get some good results this year. And as an Australian, she can really, take her career to the next level. Beyond that, we've got a few other players in the top 100 on both the men's and the women's side, which include, players like Jordan Thompson on the men's side. And then on the women's, you've got like Kimberly Birrell, Olivia Gadecki. On the men's, obviously, you've got Christopher O'Connell as well, Vukic. There's a few names there that, they can have the odd round one or round two wins at some of these 250s, 500s, or even 1,000 tournaments, but they do seem to be kind of few and far between, and they often do get their best results, at the Oz Open, when the Aussie crowd's kind of behind them. But yeah, I definitely think de Minaur, this is his best shot this year, as well as Alexei, and then Kasatkina and potentially Maya Joint could be two other players on the women's side who, do great things this year. I'm very, very keen and eager to see how the rest of the clay court swing goes from an Aussie point of view. I'm really, really rooting for, getting behind de Minaur, because like I said, I definitely think this is he's in that window right now where he's in the perfect opportunity to go really, really deep at a Grand Slam, maybe go one better and potentially even compete for a final. Obviously, like if he doesn't meet either Sinner or Carlos before the final, which he's ranked 7 in the world currently, so he probably will see one of them before the final. But, I definitely think on clay, it's a more even contest, particularly against Sinner. I think it's a more even contest, but I think with Alcaraz, like I said, his results haven't been too bad. Like he's had chances, like in the most recent battle he had in Barcelona. He was up a break, I think, in the first set. Carlos broke back, and then he had chances to break back again. Or maybe he did break back, and then Carlos broke back again. So, yeah, he just couldn't quite consolidate his breaks. But as we said, Alcaraz is arguably currently the best player on clay right now. So let's hope that de Minaur has a great run at Roland Garros this year. But yeah, anyway, guys, that's all from me. Very, very keen to hear your thoughts, your analysis, particularly around whether, what you think de Minaur's chances are this year at Roland Garros and in general for the rest of the year, as well as a few of those other Aussies players that I mentioned, like Alexei Popyrin, Kasatkina, Maya Joint, a few of the others that I mentioned. Keen to hear what your thoughts are on that. But as always, guys, please like and subscribe for more tennis and life-related content. Cheers, guys.